It's not often that a man on a United Nations sanctions list gets the red carpet rolled out for him in India, but that's what happened in October 2025 as the Taliban's foreign minister, Amir Khan Muttaqi, arrived in New Delhi for a 6-day trip. It was the first time India had ever hosted a high-ranking member of the extremist group. Muttaqi's visit wasn't an aberration. Since the Taliban retook control of Afghanistan in August 2021, India has been slowly rebuilding ties with the new government. While New Delhi hasn't gone as far as extending official recognition to the Taliban regime, only Russia has done that thus far, it announced plans to officially reopen its embassy in Kabul during Muttaqi's meetings with Indian officials. Why is India's Modi government making nice with a group that practices one of the world's most extreme versions of Islam, including banning girls and women from schools and nearly all forms of employment? You're watching The Diplomat Asia, your go-to source for Asia-Pacific news and analysis. In this episode, we discuss the recent warming of ties between India and the Taliban, why New Delhi's approach to the Islamist fundamentalist group is so different this time around, and what that means for both Afghanistan and India. Before we continue, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. During the Taliban's first stint in power from 1996 to 2001, the Indian government did not recognize their rule. Neither did most countries around the world. Only Pakistan, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia acknowledged the Taliban as the rulers of Afghanistan. But India went further than simply refusing to engage with the Taliban. New Delhi backed the Northern Alliance, which sought to overthrow the Taliban regime. To New Delhi, the Taliban were merely proxies for Pakistan, India's arch-rival. The group has its roots in Mujahideen fighters backed by Pakistan against the Soviet-supported communist government in Afghanistan. Many in India saw the Taliban's 1996 takeover as a victory for Pakistan and a wrong to be righted, if possible.
With Taliban 1.2, the concern India had was that it's a strategic tool of Pakistan, which was trying to find strategic depth against India in the 1990s. And thereby there was this concern that Taliban will harbor anti-India terrorist groups, particularly Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed.
Ties went from bad to worse with the hijacking of Indian Airlines Flight 814 in 1999. After terrorists seized control of the plane, they landed and stayed in Afghanistan until an exchange of hostages was made. The freed terrorists and hijackers appeared within days in Pakistan, underlying the close links between the Taliban and Islamabad. But everything changed when the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan removed the Taliban from power in 2001. India was quick to take advantage of the new situation. New Delhi reopened its embassy in Kabul, and over the next 20 years, India became a significant development partner for Afghanistan, investing more than $3 billion in infrastructure, health, education, and water projects. That's more than any other country in Afghanistan's immediate region. Among the notable projects, India funded the construction of Afghanistan's new parliament building for $90 million. It also rebuilt the Salma Dam at a cost of $290 million. Smaller projects included building dozens of schools and health clinics across the country. And India provided hundreds of scholarships for Afghan nationals to study in India. India was also instrumental in securing Afghanistan's membership in the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. That goodwill paid strategic benefits for New Delhi. India and the Afghan Republic government signed a strategic pact in 2011. India even provided military assistance to Afghanistan, including training for security forces and arms sales encompassing Mi-25 and Mi-35 helicopters and military vehicles. Meanwhile, Pakistan was on the outs, with the Afghan Republic government repeatedly accusing Pakistani intelligence of supporting the Taliban's continuing insurgency.
Broadly, Afghanistan people have long seen India as a friendly country because of decades of development projects, scholarships, hospitals, a respectful tone in diplomacy, and that goodwill towards the public of Afghanistan even survived 2020 when visa restrictions, especially on medical visas, left many Afghanistan people who used to regularly travel to India for medical treatments feeling hopeless.
India's investment in the Afghan Republic was a bid to increase its strategic space at Pakistan's expense, but it was costly in more ways than one. In 2008, a suicide bomber targeted the Indian embassy in Kabul, killing 58 people and injuring over 140 others. Nearly all of the victims were Afghans. India alleged that Pakistan was behind the attack, with assistance from the Taliban. Officially, the Taliban denied responsibility, but in a way that made clear the group approved of the carnage. The Taliban said in a statement, "Had we carried out the attack, we would have claimed responsibility for it with pride, since we have good reasons for it." Another attack at the Indian embassy happened in 2009, killing 17. A number of other attacks targeted Indian development projects. Most of the attacks were either claimed by or attributed to the Taliban and its offshoots, especially the Haqqani network. The Taliban saw India as an enemy, given its strong support for the Republic government, and on New Delhi's part, the feeling was mutual. But as the saying goes, in geopolitics, there are no permanent enemies. In 2020, the United States signed a deal with the Taliban that would see U.S. forces withdraw from the country. When the U.S. pulled out in the summer of 2021, the Republic government collapsed like a house of cards. Before U.S. forces had totally departed the country, the Taliban seized Kabul and proclaimed themselves the unquestioned rulers of Afghanistan. For India, which had spent 20 years building up close ties with the Republic government, this was a major blow. Remember, the Taliban had staged frequent attacks on Indian installations in Afghanistan, and to New Delhi, the group was seen as a proxy for Pakistan. India thus closed its consulates and embassy in Afghanistan within days of the Taliban takeover. However, New Delhi continued to send food and other humanitarian aid via international organizations, leaving the door open for future engagement. And that engagement materialized more quickly than expected. In June 2022, India partially reopened its embassy in Kabul, albeit as a technical mission, without a formal ambassador. In September 2023, the Republic of Afghanistan's ambassador to India announced that the embassy in New Delhi would be closing. He complained of an absence of crucial support for the host government, which sparked allegations that India was quietly forcing Republic officials out of the Afghan diplomatic enclaves in India and replacing them with Taliban representatives. On January 8, 2025, Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri met with the Taliban's foreign minister, Muttaqi, during a visit to Dubai. It was the first official exchange between the two. In the last week of April 2025, India resumed granting visas to Afghan citizens for the first time since the Taliban takeover. Shortly after that, on April 27th, Indian diplomat Anand Prakash visited Kabul. On May 15th, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar held a telephone conversation with Muttaqi, thanking him for Afghanistan's support after the Pahalgam terrorist attack. Jaishankar reiterated India's continued support for Afghanistan's development needs. A day after the phone call, Indian Ministry of External Affairs officials in New Delhi told the media that India would undertake bold moves on Afghanistan and do whatever is necessary to establish stronger relations with the Taliban-ruled state. That led to the bold move of Muttaqi's visit to New Delhi in October 2025, during which India announced that it would reopen its embassy in Kabul, while still stopping short of full recognition. Sending a full ambassador to Kabul sends a strong signal of acceptance of the Taliban regime. That puts India's relations with the Taliban on par with other partners like China, Iran, Pakistan, and Turkey. India's language during the visit also conferred a tacit recognition on Muttaqi and, by extension, the Taliban government.
Many of us, of course, were shocked by the optics of the invites of the Taliban foreign minister to India. Yes, we were shocked, but nobody is naive about a country acting in its self-interest, but they should not launder their status into normality by habit or haste. Unfortunately, in Indian government repeatedly used the term Afghanistan foreign minister for the Muttaqi. And in diplomacy, these words matter a lot. They shape policy. If the language casually confers legitimacy, it cuts India's own stated position of that they are engaging with Taliban without recognizing them.
Speaking in the Indian capital, the Taliban's foreign minister proclaimed, "I am happy to be in Delhi, and this visit will increase the understanding between the two countries. India and Afghanistan should increase their engagement and exchanges." India's efforts to deepen cooperation with the Taliban come in the context of a region in geopolitical flux.
India's approach to Taliban 2.0 is different because fundamentally the geopolitical landscape has changed. Given the fact that India had to move lock, stock and barrel out of Afghanistan on August 15, 2021, it's trying to find its strategic space again in Afghanistan, and Taliban has made numerous outreach and attempts to regain friendship with India. And the latest visit by the foreign minister, Muttaqi, is one such incident of outreach, which I think is useful in terms of understanding how this relationship is evolving and how it's different from the earlier one, in which there was absolutely no control, and India had no interest in Afghanistan at that point of time.
It's no coincidence that the first contact between India's top diplomat and his Taliban counterpart came after the Taliban openly condemned the April 22nd terror attack in Kashmir, which India blamed on a Pakistani proxy group. Muttaqi's October 2025 visit to New Delhi also overlapped with a serious escalation in tensions between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Despite Pakistan's long history with the Taliban, Islamabad has increasingly complained that the Taliban is providing safe haven to the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP, also called the Pakistani Taliban. On October 9th, Pakistan launched a series of airstrikes deep into Afghan territory. Previous escalations had taken place strictly in border areas, but this time Pakistan struck Kabul, claiming to be targeting the TTP's leadership. Even as Pakistan's relationship with the Taliban worsens, Pakistan's relationship with China and China's deepened ties with the Taliban could ultimately bring them together once again. Russia officially recognized the Taliban government in July 2025, the first and so far only country to do so. But China was actually the first country to welcome a Taliban ambassador, all the way back in September 2023. Beijing has carefully navigated its relationship with the Taliban, stopping short of official recognition, but moving ahead in most other avenues, including economic cooperation. And Beijing is taking care to bring Pakistan, China's iron brother, along. Beijing was the driving force behind two trilateral meetings of the foreign ministers of China, Afghanistan, and Pakistan held in May and August of 2025. At both meetings, the three countries emphasized a plan to include Afghanistan in the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a multi-billion-dollar investment initiative that India strongly opposes because it passes through disputed areas in Kashmir. To what extent are these moves by China and Pakistan motivating India's outreach to the Taliban?
That, I think, is a significant point because the fundamentally Chinese presence has increased in Afghanistan. And given the nexus China has with Pakistan and Pakistan's own outreach and its connection with the Taliban, there are concerns that if China and Pakistan come together in Afghanistan, there could be a kind of attempt of denying India that strategic space which it requires in Afghanistan.
Also engaging with the Taliban are Afghanistan's Central Asian neighbors, which frame their frequent interactions with the regime as pragmatic. Transport corridors are at the heart of Central Asia's engagement with Kabul, with Uzbekistan in particular invested in railway projects that envision connecting Central Asia to the sea and international markets via Iran's Chabahar port, incidentally, a port in which India has been deeply invested. For Indian policymakers, then, the recent outreach to the Taliban may be driven by the fear of missing out as Afghanistan's other neighbors step up engagement. Thanks for watching this far. If you're enjoying our content, visit thediplomat.com for comprehensive coverage of Asia-Pacific geopolitics. Use the link in the description for 10% off your first year's subscription. Leave a comment below if there's a topic you'd like to see covered by The Diplomat. Since the Taliban returned to power in August 2021, much of the international community has conditioned official recognition on there being an inclusive government in Kabul, critically, one that respects the rights of women and minorities. But the actions of foreign governments have made no difference to the Taliban's policies, unless they have actually made things worse.
I believe Afghanistan human rights disaster is where it is largely because of a naive approach by foreign governments. They had major leverage from day one to use, which is recognizing the Taliban regime. The Taliban are dying for their regime to be recognized. That leverage could have been tied to a clear policy, a modern, inclusive government that represents all ethnicities of Afghanistan, and including both women and men. But instead, these foreign governments sold that leverage cheaply through endless, pointless engagements, and now some are drifting toward recognizing the Taliban regime anyway.
Afghanistan is the only country in the world where women and girls are not allowed to pursue education beyond primary school as a matter of state policy. Women are now also barred from most jobs outside the home. They are not even allowed to leave their homes and travel without a male guardian. Many activists have labeled the situation in Afghanistan a gender apartheid. And it's not only women's rights under siege. Even boys have found their educational access sharply curtailed as the Taliban cuts away access to modern subjects like science and foreign languages in favor of Islamic teachings. Meanwhile, ethnic and religious minorities face severe repression as well as frequent targeting by terrorist groups. Yet human rights have all but entirely fallen to the side as states like India move to engage with the Taliban without preconditions.
Initially, there were a lot of concerns of human rights and whole idea of inclusion of other groups, particularly the minorities. But over time, as the geopolitical landscape changed and there were concerns that India will not be able to regain its strategic space, I think India is looking at a more pragmatic view of dealing with the Taliban, and it's using a realpolitik lens. or rather a realist lens of dealing with the Taliban as they are. The hope is that by engagement, there would be a gradual socialization by which Taliban could change behavior, but there's no guarantee to do that. But I think it's also important to understand that India signed an agreement of strategic partnership in 2011, wherein the basis for the friendship and relationship with Afghanistan had been set, and by which India is continuing its relation with whatever regime holds power in Afghanistan.
Hopes that a moderate faction within the Taliban would urge the easing of restrictions on women have yet to bear fruit. In fact, the Taliban have exercised even greater control over Afghan citizens by experimenting in early October with a complete internet blackout. Indeed, critics say engagement with the Taliban by regional partners, including India, has actually made the human rights situation worse for Afghans.
The past 4 years engaged to change the Taliban has done completely the opposite. The Taliban has tightened their new edicts every day against women and girls. Ethnic repression and collective punishment are worse. Mass arbitrary detentions are peaking, and each visit by a foreign delegation dropped the bar again and again. In 4 years, we moved from engagement without recognition to de facto legitimization of the Taliban regime. Engagement the way it is does not help Afghanistan people at all. It, in fact, empowers the group that made people suffer. It, in fact, hands the Taliban the prestige and the propaganda they need to secure their regime for longer. And it also sidelines victims, which is the people of Afghanistan.
Beyond human rights concerns, there's the issue that motivated India to keep its distance from the Taliban the first time around: the group's connections with terrorist outfits like Al-Qaeda. The Taliban, which originated as an Islamic militant group, has never outgrown its roots. A report from the United Nations Security Council issued in July 2025 concluded that the de facto authorities in Afghanistan continued to maintain a permissive environment for a range of terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda and its affiliates, posing a serious threat to the security of Central Asian and other countries. Yet so far, India has not seen an uptick of terrorist attacks. In fact, Muttaqi, the Taliban's foreign minister, made a point of decrying the Pahalgam attack in India-administered Kashmir in April 2025.
Compared to what it was with Taliban 1.2, where India had no contact with the Taliban and it was seen as a strategic tool and a prodigy of the Pakistani military establishment, the fact that India has established contact with the Taliban, have upgraded the drives, and are set establishing the embassy in Afghanistan itself shows that there is a more of counterterrorism and security cooperation which is occurring. So the fear of Taliban harboring anti-India groups has been minimized to a large extent, and Taliban have made numerous promises that they'll not let their soil be used against any foreign country, including India.
Pakistan has borne the brunt of terrorist attacks since the Taliban's return to power, as the Pakistani Taliban, or TTP, continues to receive safe haven and weapons from across the border in Afghanistan. But India should take a lesson from Pakistan's example. Turning a blind eye to terrorism and militancy because it harms your arch rival never ends well. India was a target in the early 2000s. It could easily become a target again.
New Delhi said it would upgrade its technical mission back to an embassy, but still stop short of recognizing the Taliban regime, which again suggests New Delhi still does not fully trust the Taliban regime. India has lived with cross-border terrorism for decades. So I think India knows better the nature of the Taliban. As a group that grew up as a jihadist movement, they will always choose ideology over being interdependent with any country. And India knows this. For India, the benefit of this engagement lies in maintaining a channel of communication with the Taliban for securing their interests and also for balancing the growing influence of Pakistan. But I don't think it is worth it. India, as a country that has long suffered from cross-border terrorism, cannot simply give this sort of message it just did to the global terrorist and jihadist group by inviting Foreign Minister of Taliban Muttaqi. The dangerous message this sent to those groups was that engagement and legitimacy can be earned without reform, and that the use of violence to topple an elected government pays, which is a very dangerous message.
Thanks for watching The Diplomat Asia. Now you know what's driving India to embrace the Taliban. If you liked this video, check out our explainer on the role of ASEAN in Southeast Asia.